Hi and welcome to my session, which is called What You Always Wanted to Know About Practical and AI Topics But Were Too Afraid to Ask. Honestly, I do not think or expect you were too afraid to ask, but it's still important topics that are so exciting to discuss in the modern times that I thought about presenting you about. First, a couple of words about myself. My name is Niko Neugebauer and I work for a wonderful company called Claranet. I describe myself as a data professional. This means that I do develop, tune, analyze different data solutions for our amazing clients. Just a short disclaimer before we dive into the content. I'm not teaching, I'm a kind of preaching. I just want to keep the conversation started because there are so many important issues and so many important topics in the development, in the deployment, and in the support of the AI solution that I think it's time to talk for them with a higher frequency than we actually do. All of us know this wonderful equation. We have a lot of data from which we can extract some information and hopefully, just hopefully, we can get a valuable insight for us or for our esteemed customers. We always wanted to focus on the right side of the equation, which is the insight, right? But the thing is, with the artificial intelligence projects, we need to see a bigger picture. And you cannot focus only on protecting or doing the ethical work with the data inside. You definitely need to start right from the beginning, right when you start the development process, right where you have your data. It should englobe all the solution at all the time. That's enough for the introduction. Let's dive into the trust and ethics as we expected. Trust and ethics, they go together. They are a kind of a chicken and egg. You don't know which one was the first because they are so tightly coupled and depend on each other. I'm not going to teach you what trust and what ethics is. Every intelligent person here attending knows perfectly what I'm talking about. You're all wonderfully intelligent people. But I want to bring a couple of points just to show what is really important in the artificial intelligence world of solutions. So, trust is absolutely essential when we're doing the business, because nobody does the business with the people they do not trust, right? Ethics is something really that is expected from companies dealing with sensitive data, with automated solutions that do not include a sentient being, right? And both are absolutely required in the 21st century, because maybe 50 or 100 years ago you didn't really care whom you are associated with, but we're living in a world where things can go in a very different direction if you do not respect some of the current modern ethics principles. And if you want to develop the next step of your ethics, you need to have the trust of your clients, right? And of course, in order to have some trust, you need to already practice the ethics. So let's dive into the ethics, right? First thing I want to point is the transparency. For something as complex and as hidden as the artificial intelligence, where sometimes not even the best programmer you have on your team is able to discover the exact pattern which has been applied in this case, you need to practice some openness, and not just some. You need to have a greater transparency in order to gain the trust. But because I believe if you do not practice them, you will have to do some more due diligence, and probably you will face more auditing. And besides the people who are working in auditing, I don't think anybody likes the auditing really much. Let's focus on the general ethic topics. We can't go into every little single detail of every one of them, but we'll take a look in the detail and some of them. First of all is a manipulation. The results, the output, the process. Anything potentially can be manipulated, and there are issues both on the legal side and on the ethical side, which can reflect in the trust of your customers. The second one is responsibility. And when we talk about responsibility, people might think that there is just one aspect, but there are more. First of all, I believe that there is a responsibility for the bottom line. When we create a product, we want it to be doing something good for the people who are using it. The impact is really essential in the times we're living. Not only the living beings, not only the companies that are using your products, but there is also the environment. You might ask, well, why would you bring the environment? I'll point you to a little document called European Union Artificial Intelligence Guidelines, which dedicates a little chapter to focus on this aspect. And since artificial intelligence has no concept of the living environment, it might just be a good idea to incorporate it right in your design to be aware of it. An extremely important topic is the professional core ethics. Do not let it pass by. Do not leave it to the end until you start analyzing this. Focus on it right in the beginning. In the beginning, you should be asking just one question. What if my intelligence system, what if my AI will know more than the client itself? Well, it doesn't seem that bad. Well, I'm not very sensitive to that. Everybody will be okay. Sounds about right. But wait a second. What if you have some student that will extract some extremely important insight from your artificial intelligence system and will share with the colleague, and that data will get stolen, and that will become eventually so important and so involved as a criminal offense? It might be pointed out that you knew something very sensitive and you did not share with your client. The consequences are very, very, very grave. So I think we need to be really, really careful and establish the ethic of our solution right in the beginning. Contrary to the traditional data solution, in artificial intelligence, there is even a bigger need for the trust. And not just trust in the outcome, but trust in the whole process, as we have already spoken right from the beginning. There is a need for a trust for a process. Since the development, the history of the data that is being used to train your model, the bias potential that can crawl into the system and deliver some unexpected or maybe even unwanted results. Think about the transparency. Transparency is the key in order to gain the trust in the process. The trust is also essential in the results. Sometimes it's impossible to reproduce the results, but having the system that will allow you to verify and understand, they can give the understanding to the client and trust into your system. The trust itself is needed to be in the whole ecosystem, in the support, in the company core values, in the people involved. This is absolutely essential to have and to keep the trust of the people using your solution. But trust, as we all know, is not something that is absolutely static. Trust is a dynamic thing. It changes, it evolves according to the technology as well. You know, if we pick something as simple as Alexa or Siri, and we take two people. One is a 20-year-old who is, digital conscious, says, this is the thing I used to have at home when I was a kid. And the other is somebody who is maybe 50 or 60 years old, who has a lot of mistrust into the new technology, even though it may be over a decade. So,
Every significant move also on the trust plane happens within a next generation. Just be aware of it and use this trust into your favor. We all know that we live in an era where privacy is actually the opposite of the product quality. It happens because of the amount of data that is needed to analyze and optimize the product. So the core decision for all our living generation is basically how much privacy are we ready to abdict in order to get a better product's quality. And that raises a lot of ethical questions on the provider side. And to make it even a little bit easier, don't forget to think about the data ownership, because even with GDPR regulations and all the future regulations that might come into the field, there are always the things that you can gain a better trust from your clients or just lose it in a couple of days. Another big thing is digital communication and trust. We live in the era of the deepfakes, and I call them as a kind of a V1. But in the current times, where we do a lot of the remote connections, how do we know that the person is on the other side is an actual person and not some very elaborate AI changing the appearance in the real time? As for me, it's just a question of time when these trust questions will be raised. Let's look a little bit into the details. First and foremost, the security. Privacy is essential. Don't forget about the GDPR. The surveillance is another topic. It's not just some small little groups that somewhere in the middle of nowhere have some paranoia. Surveillance is pretty much real, and you will have some Western European countries which have a significant complex about the surveillance, and any solution that can point not directly to the company, not to the product, but company can be bought, new people can come into the company. The possibility of the surveillance is something that AI solution and the society, well, there is a lot of discussion and there is a lot of fear on this topic. Another one is the surveillance economy. It's the free social economy. When you are, well, not paying, but being sold as a product, the trust and the ethics will suffer greatly. And given the recent histories, I'm sure you're about, you don't want to go this way. Manipulation of the behavior. It's not just the dark patterns that exploiting the behavioral biases and the deception. These are very real things, as we are all aware. I will argue, and I hope that some of these things in this decade will be defined as addictive substances, because we will not give an alcohol to a 5-year-old and say, well, you've got a drinking problem. Well, we need to regulate some of the things. And when you are creating something very, very addictive, ethics is a good thing that you should be using in order to contain it, right? The users, these are very important participation in the process. Think about the gaming industry. Think about the ethics of the low cost, where sometimes you will pay actually much more than of the big cost solution. And I'm not even saying like the social media behaves and Cambridge Analytica is too much known everywhere right now. The last thing I want to point you on is the manipulation of behavior of your own system. And I'm pointing back to the security, because if you are inputting the data back into your system and training it, you're just giving a direct channel for the final users, consumers, to influence your system. And that would be another potential of the manipulation, the one you will not be happy about. By this moment, you must be already developing your own bias against my presentation, thinking, where are the bias? Well, here they are. I believe that the bias starts rather with a very, very, very simple premise. It's I know how this works or how this will work. Because the reality is we can fight, we can argue, or we discuss as much as we want, but there is always a bias based on those people who are developing the system. And there will be another category of the bias which is based on the type of the data that you are using, which is opening a huge discussion on where should you get the data, how you should evaluate it. But the bias will be inherently in your system. All you can do against them is fighting with the diversity, with different point of views, with different people who are doing different things. Something you cannot avoid when you're talking about ethics and trust in the artificial intelligence solutions are the human-computer interaction. I'm not talking about the first, the second, and the third robotic laws, but all of you perfectly aware. I'm talking about the ethics of applying in some of the more sensitive, more human areas, such as the healthcare or reproductive or children education. Would you accept somebody to teach your kids that is not a human being but a computer? Would you want to take care of your parents that it will be just a computer and not a human being, not somebody that can show some essential empathy? Very, very, very tough questions. Another essential topic for this presentation is, of course, the employment. While I personally believe that AI will give more opportunities and it will create more jobs and it will be destroyed, even though some of the older and more traditional jobs will become obviously obsolete, the society needs to accompany this growth. We cannot jump in front of the train. And your AI solution needs to show the sensitivity to the understanding of the society. But let's talk about the autonomous systems. Will we give the power of the final decision to the autonomous system? Maybe. If we are driving a vehicle, yeah, some people already do, in the matter of fact. But will we give the red button? Will we give the military the decision? Well, I don't think that this is something we want to discuss in the next years to come, but we'll see, right? In the end, we want to decide the autonomous system might be in place, but we need to have a supervision and an additional layer of security. Either it be a human being who does this supervision, or it be another autonomous system that just stops it where the AI that we have deployed should not be going to. We finish this with the key words that I have been mentioning this through all the presentation. Transparency, transparency, and transparency. It will give you ethics. It will give you trust. You need to be transparent in something that is a pioneer for the market. I will just mention something, of course, that is missing otherwise from every AI presentation is the singularity. But I don't think it's a good idea to finish with the singularity. And that's why I want to finish with a message of hope, plus a little worrying, as you might expect from me. Everything is a muscle. AI can be trained, and its behavior, like a behavior of a sentient or a logical system, eventually can be limited. So there is a potential to take a reasonable control. The things that you cannot fail are constant bias evaluation, the human reviewing system, especially in the early ages, in the early development of your solution, reproducibility wherever it's possible, totally understand that sometimes it's extremely hard. Transparency, never fail it, and never fail a security system. With that, I thank you very much and have a great conference.